Oh man, I
Good.
see. That's your book in the background right there behind you, isn't it? A Father's
Yes, it
Handbook.
is. My
Isn't
son
it?
just picked up his, so he bought a 2016 Volkswagen GTI Autobahn edition,
Okay.
and he bought it with his policy. And there's no shortage of people out there who are here today and gone tomorrow in this business. And it's unfortunate because I've experienced it when I was early on, when I was doing investments, when I first took out a Roth IRA. I mean, I think I went through, there was 3 or 4 different advisors in a 2-year period. It's like, wow, that people take that as normal. And that's not, that should not be normal. Like, you should have somebody you can count on. And I think that's what you do really well and what you're thinking about. And a lot of the other practitioners in our space, they are there and we're dedicated to the people that we work with. It's a lifetime commitment.
Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's interview, I'm going to be having a conversation with my friend, Rob Brayton. He's a husband, he's a father, he's an author, and he is a professional in this infinite banking space. We recently met, have been having conversations, and we're bringing his origin story to you in this episode, and I hope that you enjoy, as I've enjoyed getting to know Rob better. Rob, thanks for jumping on here with me this morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Very humbled to be here. So yeah, it's great to be here and talk to you.
Fantastic. Well, we've already been talking this morning about how, I'm trying to switch gears, honestly, just getting off of a phone call with a gentleman in Pennsylvania who's, a year in his infinite banking journey. But we've had this scheduled because we've been spending time on the phone because I've been getting to know you.
Yeah.
So I would like to give you a bit of an introduction, of course, from what I do know, which is that you're a husband, you're a father, you're an author. I haven't
Yes.
gotten your book. I've talked to you about that's in my pipeline now. I need to be able to, because anything around fatherhood, I love it. I was making it. You'll love this, Rob. And here I am. I'm trying to share something with you while I'm trying to give you an introduction.
It's all good.
I'm writing a list out last night at some point in my evening. I'm writing a list out of steps towards knighthood with my sons, right? I'm thinking about gifts. I'm thinking about ceremonies. I'm thinking about, what kind of challenges should I put in front of them and say, well, hey, when you do this or when you try this, or so anything around fatherhood, I'm terribly interested in, is what I'm saying. So you're an author, you're an authorized IBC practitioner, and that's
Yep.
how you and I got to meet each other. And
Yep.
you've been active in the community where our paths have overlapped, and of course that attracted me to want to have more one-on-one conversations. And you've been generous there with your time, and I've been enjoying our conversations. And I knew that I wanted to record your origin story. So again,
Yeah.
let me just, I'm trying to give you an introduction. I'm trying to say good morning to you. Anything else before we dive in on your story and how you found infinite banking?
No, I'm just, happy to be here and have an opportunity to talk to you a little bit more, and continue to get to know you as well. It was really humbling to get involved with some of the groups that we're involved with, on the IBC side, and just to be able to interact with a lot of great professionals like yourself and be able to have these types of conversations is nothing short of amazing, because it helps me learn and in turn helps me with my clients and even my family, because there's great things to learn from other people on how they like to do some stuff too. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're surrounded by a lot of quality people. There's no question about it. And I'm glad that we've been able to meet because of that. So where are you from? Let's start with that. Where are you from?
yeah, so born and raised in central Wisconsin, mainly north central Wisconsin. So it gets rather cold here, but we have wonderful summers and we're thankfully in that time right now. So we get to spend a lot of time outside and we really enjoy that, spending it together as a family, doing projects around the house, lots of different things on that front.
Okay. Yeah, I was getting ready to say, I mean, I know it's June, but you're so far up north. I started to ask if y'all even come out of your thaw yet.
That depends upon the year, because sometimes we've not really started to feel like we're thawing until this time. So thankfully this year's been a little better on that front, and we've been going through a decent amount of rain, which is a good thing because we have garden stuff like that. So but looking forward to some sun next week. My sons and I, part of one of our traditions is we go to the IndyCar race at Elkhart Lake for Road America, and we camp. So hopefully it's not all wet and rainy next week for that. So
Very cool. Okay, well, give me another minute or two then. I don't have any time constraint here, but you've mentioned gardening, you've mentioned activities with the boys. So if you would just describe your current family dynamic, what does the family look like, and what is it that y'all are into? Because I'll maybe make a little fun here. I don't know. We'll see. You mentioned chickens to me when we were on the
yeah.
phone the other day, and I asked you about what breed, and you weren't sure how to report back. So, I mean, do you have anything different for me today? Can you give me a chicken breed or what?
We have a few. So we have some Leghorns. We have a Polish. We have a couple of Rhode Island Reds. Um, then we have some Jersey Giants. So there's a few different ones in there that we have. So we're hoping they produce more because we got quite a few young ones. But yeah, it's fun. My wife's the one who kind of orchestrates a lot of the homesteading sort of things. Not that I mean, I'm all on board with it, right? But she's really good at researching and finding the different ways to do it. She's really helped us out from a gardening standpoint, and then with the chickens and all these things. So she's really my better half that keeps me grounded more than anything else. So yeah,
And how many children?
we have I have five children altogether. So I have an adult daughter who's married. She got married last year. Just had her anniversary actually. Then I have a 19-year-old son who's still at home, but he's working full time. And then I also have a 17-year-old son, and then I have an 11-year or a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old daughter. So two daughters at the end. And yeah, that keeps us pretty busy. They have lots of different things that they like to do. And I think one of the things that I really have, and my wife and I have done a good job of this, is like really structuring that we have a lot of family time and we like to do a lot of fun stuff together. Um, that's become more difficult as obviously as kids age, they have different activities, they have jobs, they have different things going on, but it's still a priority. Last night, just as an example, my wife she's a children's director in our church, and she spent a lot of time um, with VBS this last week. So she was running Vacation Bible School, and it was the end of that last night. And we spent, I don't know, probably the better part of an hour and a half just connecting with the boys, talking about what's going well, what are they struggling with. So I know that was something she was really looking forward to be able to do, and it was a lot of fun.
Okay, so let me run this by you. This is fun. We'll get to Rob's infinite banking here in a second, but we're having a good time. So I'm in charge of a vacation Bible school class here
Hmm.
in a couple of weeks myself, and I was working on our curriculum. And
Hmm.
here's where I'm at so far. Tell me what you think about this. I think day one is going to be practicing slingshots and some other physical challenges. Day two is going to be sword dueling. Day three, and we've got them some legit trainer, full size hand and a half swords to train. Day three is build your own spear or staff. So we're going to go out in the
I
woods. We're going to
like
be
it.
cutting stuff. Yeah, yeah. I thought you would. And let's see. Day four is knife throwing. So
Awesome.
that's our regimen for this year for the activity side of Vacation Bible School, and that
Yep.
correlates to some lessons from Scripture. But yeah, how does
Yeah.
that strike you?
I think it sounds great. I mean, I don't know many kids that would shy away from wanting to do that sort of stuff. I know my kids would have been all over that at those ages. Um,
Yep.
I think the important thing, obviously, with any vacation Bible school is like those things are awesome, but how does it tie back to Christ and my relationship with Him? I think that's the most important thing for them to be able to take from it. But yeah, absolutely. I think from if you can tie those things together, that experience is a great way to help anchor that seed for those kids.
Yep, absolutely. Well, our pastor gave us a beautiful outline, and it's about being armed for battle. So, yeah,
Yeah.
the four lessons that we have there, I'm definitely looking forward to. And we do have the 9 through 12 year olds. So there's just a
All right.
boatload of energy. So we got to put some arduous work uh, uh, to captivate the attention as well on that side of things. All right, cool, cool. But I
Yep.
love hearing that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I like knowing, and I think that people value having those insights into your life when they
Hmm.
hear about your infinite banking journey. So tell me what was going on then in life when you were exposed to infinite banking. What did that look like?
Yeah. Good question. Um, I'll tell you a little bit about when I discovered it. So like what was going on when I discovered it, and then I can maybe talk a little bit about my background leading up to it too, if that's all right. So when I discovered infinite banking, um, I was in I was going in my career, things were going well. They weren't going poorly by any means. I've actually been blessed, in many ways to be being very successful in different career paths that I've chosen. However, as I was going through and I was just thinking about where our current financial situation was, I'm looking at it. I've done all of the traditional aspects of finance. I have a 401k, a savings account, doing all these different things, the Roth IRA, and read a lot of books. I read Benjamin Graham, who was Warren Buffett's mentor, and read a lot of other traditional finance books about how to, you know, get the most out of whatever I'm doing, and took a very active stance in managing my 401k and doing all these things, right? Everything that we're told is like the best way to build yourself up. Well, I start looking at it and I realized there had been a lot of money that had flowed through my hands over that time frame. Yeah, we had a house. Granted, it's mortgaged. We had vehicles. Most of them were paid off. We had minimal debt. Things were going pretty well, but I was like, something's still wrong here. So I feel like something is off. And I really just took that to the Lord, and I was like, I don't know what's wrong. I just need guidance. I need help. And I don't know what it is, but something isn't quite right. So that being said, I prayed, and this was probably in, the latter half of Q3 going into Q4 of 22, give or take. And just been praying, and I know that Lord doesn't always answer prayers immediately. So I'm sitting there and just kind of going about doing my day to day, doing my routine. I would got up in the morning, was doing my workout. This was in the winter, so I had to work out inside. And I was listening to a podcast, and podcasts are a way that I've always used to learn. So a lot of my stuff is all educational. You know how you get those reviews at the end of the year, and they talk about what's your main area for podcasts. Mine was like 99.4% educational stuff. So anyway, I'm listening to the Tom Woods show, and my now mentor had just released a book, is Between the Lies, by Luke Tatum. He had released this book and he was talking about it. And the things that he was talking about were so different from what I had ever heard, but it was everything I was experiencing in my own financial situation and for our family. And I'm like, I need to learn more. Like there's something here. I don't know what it is yet, but there's something here. So I schedule a call with Luke. We start talking. Luke goes through and he's like, if you're wanting to learn more and you really want to go to the next step, he's like, you need to get this book. You need to get Becoming Your Own Banker. So what do? I get the book and read it. And I'm like, okay, I need to do this. I need to implement this in my own situation. However, because I had been so ingrained in the traditional financing, you know, financial world, I started small and I was looking at, well, this is what I can afford. as opposed to not thinking about it truly as a banking system, still thinking about it more as like protection and investments. Well, as I fast forward and I start to really get it, read the book a second time, really getting to understand it, then I'm like, okay, we need to expand this system because this is way too small. So from there, I started structuring out what future policies were going to look like. But at the same time, I was talking to almost everybody I knew about it just because of what I knew and what I saw it was going to do. And, being able to, it's one thing when you find a system, find a product, whatever it is, and it works as well as what's advertised, you feel really good about that. And I did, but this was working, beyond what I had expected. And that's where it was like, okay, not only do I need to do this for myself, but I think I've found what I needed that would really fulfill me and allow me to use the gifts that God's given me and put them together and be able to help other people. So that's where my next step was talking to Luke about, hey, how do I become and do what you're doing? How do I become a practitioner? How do I get involved in this? And here I am, 2+ years later and practitioner. And we have 3 policies in our system and we're expanding. My son has a policy and he's starting the process. So it's amazing at what it's been able to do for us in just this short amount of time. And I have such hope for the future. And I think that's the thing that I love for not only my clients, but really anybody thinking about this concept is the level of hope it gives you for your future at what's possible. All the things that you maybe thought might have been possible they start to become realities when you really understand how to redirect and keep that money in your system as opposed to it just flowing through like I had been experiencing for 20 years.
Okay. So let me make sure I've got this one point right. Are you telling me that you're the kind of psychopath that will listen to financial information while trying to do training?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I can't. I'm the biggest fan. I'm always listening to something. Now, if I'm weed eating, if I'm driving, I always would like to be, almost always, talking to somebody on the phone, listening to something, or if I haven't had enough quiet time, I'll have some intentional quiet time for thinking and reflection, prayer, meditation, right? So I listen to stuff all the time. But I can't, maybe it's my inability to multitask. I don't feel like I can give enough attention to something financial when I'm trying to, I don't know, do deadlifts or my pull-ups or whatever. I got to listen to music. So you're one of those guys, I guess.
It keeps my mind off of the actual physical effort. And then I'm not thinking about how challenging I might be pushing myself. It's more so my mind's activated and can keep me focused that way. And my body just does what it needs to do.
I got you. See, I mean, I guess that there would be some things if I were on a long run, sure, I could listen to, but if I'm, if I got a few 100 pounds squatting on my back, I don't think I could. I need more focus, I guess. All right, well, that's neat. I like hearing all this kind of stuff, the gardening aspects, the trips with your boys, the exercise. I like this kind of stuff as well. So it seemed like a series of dominoes.
Yeah.
Listening to this person led to that book, led to this person, led to a different book. You just there's this series of events that led you to infinite banking through the book itself, becoming your own banker. So that was your first real piece of content. And I say that in the way that I do now because there is so much that's online, right?
Yeah.
And even directly from the Nelson Dash Institute or practitioners or other professionals in the space that personally implement infinite banking, such as myself included, right? But you got turned on to the book first. So I guess if that was your first exposure to infinite banking, I would love to know what happened between your ears. What did you immediately gravitate to? loved it, understood it, and then what about the opposite? What did you maybe see or hear the first time and think that can't be right, or how
Hmm.
is that so? I would just love
Yep.
to know in your own words what those
No,
two things were.
it's a great question, right? I would say what we'll talk about what attracted me to it was I'm very much a numbers person in a lot of ways. I like data. I like that sort of stuff. I People probably think I'm weird that way, but I do. And I like statistics. I always have. And I was looking through the book, I was reading through it and really reading it, really understanding what's going on. And I was like, okay, this is making a lot of sense from a numbers standpoint and really understanding. I understood how much I was paying in interest. I see that stuff. I was, in control of my finances that way. So like, I know how much is going out. I see how much the bank takes in a mortgage, for in those first 5 to 10 years, even 15 years, that's going to interest. So like, I get it. And I understood that part. And that's where I was like, okay, there's something to this. Now, I think like most people probably from our generation and especially older, when you first see that term of whole life insurance, I was like, are you sure? And that's where taking the time to really break that down with Luke, and he showed me how it works, and then understanding through the book how it actually works. I was like, why did no one tell me this about it? No one told me that this product is that powerful. And not only that, it's the level of control, the flexibility, all of these things that come with it, and especially the guarantees. I'm like, this is everything that I was missing for 20 plus years. I wish I would have found it when I was, done this when I was 25 years old. And I think that was the big sticking point at first was like, but I was open minded enough to say like, okay, there's something to this, and I think the thing that really helped me understand that this was God answering my prayer was all the different drops of scripture that Nelson had in that book, and hearing his story, the 2x4 across the face about about how he already had what he needed to solve the problem. Those were the things that I was like, okay, that put me all my guard down, and then I was like, okay, I can listen, I can understand, I can try to see what God's trying to tell me here. And I think that was the big tipping point for me at overcoming those initial objections.
Okay, let me ask a follow-up question about something that you said, or two. I've got a couple. Let's see if I can even remember both of them. I'm not the
Yeah.
best at always holding more than one thing in my mind at once. But when you said what you did about a mortgage, let's say,
Hmm.
did you actually know? And I'm not questioning you. I'm just make sure I'm getting an accurate picture of where your thought process was before you read the book and after. Did you actually know clearly how much was being paid in interest on, let's say, your mortgage? Um, and did you just chalk it up to, well, but there's no alternative, so it is what it is, right? Because
Hmm.
I feel like, okay, so see, I feel like that even right there is more awareness, because you're nodding your head, is more awareness than maybe a lot of people have. I feel like people just take on that 15 or that 30-year note and they never look at it. They just make the payment and they don't even, look under the hood, so to speak,
Hmm.
and so I feel like that's interesting to know. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I feel like we're
So
we're so much hamsters on a wheel sometimes that we're not even looking at the mechanics of the wheel that we're running the
yeah,
tread on.
and I'm a little guilty of that too in some respects, right? We all are in lots of ways. I will say that at one point in time, for roughly about a year and a half, I was a mortgage advisor. So I really do understand the mechanics behind a mortgage, and I understood how those things operated. And no, being in charge of running the finances in my home, that's something I needed to look at. And I like to see, where is that money going? How come this balance is taking forever to drop? Well, when you look at an amortization table and you really explore it, you see what's actually happening. And I think, from that perspective, it at the same time, it was like, well, I wish there was a different way. But you're like, there isn't one. When you don't understand the whole problem, you don't know what to do, right? So I didn't understand the whole problem. I didn't know that there was an option or a solution to that problem. We just aren't taught that. And no one's taught banking, even from a young age. We think we know what we're doing, but until we actually see and understand money, understand how, the world kind of works. And, I think I'm, I love Austrian economics. I was kind of late to the game on that front, but like all of that made a lot of the things I had been learning and my sort of natural distrust for for government kind of all tied together. And it's, there's lots of different things from that perspective that just, I think it all kind of came together as I started getting into this process, and like, oh, all these things that I've learned that God's shown me all along this path are all lining up, and all these experiences fit together so that I can help other people. And that part of it was just so awesome to see, in that I was praying, and like when I was talking earlier about my story, not only was I praying about the financial side of it, it's what do I want to do with my career, and where, because I didn't feel like I was where I needed to be, and to truly use what God's given me for his glory. And now I feel like I have that. And that's the great part about this whole process. And it's so fun to be able to work with people and help them and do that same thing that I experienced.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about the professional side of things. And I'd actually like to talk with you about the Austrian economics and lots of other stuff. All right. So if I heard right, you liked the control aspect, you liked the numbers aspect,
Mm-hmm.
but then you maybe questioned the whole life part. Anything further there that went through your mind, or that you had to work through, or have conversations with Luke, or go back to the book on when it came to, okay, but we're going to do this process through whole life insurance? Anything
Mm-hmm.
else you'd say there?
Um, well, yeah, I think, but what I realized in that whole process, right, is I didn't really know about whole life insurance. I didn't really know a lot, even though I was licensed at one point back in the day before now, like I am now, um, but in roughly '06, '07, I was licensed in life accident health. And I didn't truly understand, like I knew what whole life was, but I didn't really understand whole life. And the people I was working with at that time, what do they tell you? Well, it's expensive. Well, yeah, because they're insuring you for your entire lifetime. And that's just the tiniest part of how that product really works. And like so many other people, I fell into that trap of, well, it's death benefit. Why would I pay more here when I can get more here and for less money? And it's that whole traditional financial sort of thought process. So with Luke being able to break that down and help me to understand it, and then I think Nelson does a great job of showing how the process really works within the book as well. That's the stuff that I was like, oh, I completely did not understand what this product actually does. I had zero clue. And that's the case for a lot of people. Like I totally get it. Because when so many people are thinking about whole life, they're thinking about the most basic forms of whole life insurance, not thinking about what mutual dividend paying whole life insurance really is, right? And that's the part that blows me away. I was just running some stuff the other day, um, actually helping one of our fellow practitioners at some examples, and looking at a straight up essentially base policy, and I was blown away with what that thing will do when you think about it in the context of banking. It was pretty amazing. And what it would do in terms of dividends when somebody's ready to take passive income. I don't want to make this all shop talk, right? But like I was really blown away by that aspect of it, that I didn't even, and I think that's the thing where Nelson says about rethinking your thinking. We have to continually do that day in and day out, even as practitioners, even as individuals. The more we do that, the more we expand and understand what's going on, and we can help solve different challenges that way for ourselves and for other people.
No, absolutely. I don't mind talking shop. Listen, we could be talking shop in one breath. We could be talking gardening in the next. Then we could be talking about, psychopathic listening to financial information while doing squats or what. Like I'm here
I
for it.
also drink black coffee. I don't know if that makes it worse.
All right, now listen, as a biblical scholar and fellow, I would imagine that you would like milk and honey in your right. It's like a land flowing with milk and honey. I mean, that's how I'm drinking
Yeah,
mine.
my body doesn't take to that so well. So,
Oh, come on, you're from Wisconsin. You like the dairy's got to be your bread and butter.
well, cheese, yes.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Um, okay, so that's making me want to ask some more follow up questions. And I'm seeing so many other things that I want to get to as well at the same time. Let me make a decision here.
Well, it's your show. You make the call.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Oh, I know what it was. I said in something that I recorded yesterday, actually, I tried to verbalize, and this is the word that I came up with, how versatile whole life insurance is, how many facets it actually has to it is misunderstood. People are just not aware. And again, this is coming from a guy who's trying to say, I'm realizing how versatile whole life insurance is after I've been doing infinite banking for 10 years. But
Mm-hmm.
I was recording some things yesterday. And I mean, there are just so many factors that allow. I'll give you an example, Rob. I used to be in the travel space,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a good buddy make a real impactful image in the front of a room. A lot of times he would take his phone and he would beat it on the table and he would hold it up and say, this phone makes a horrible hammer. Just, it does not do a good job. You're not
Yep.
going to drive a nail with this phone, right? But when it's used in the way that it can be used, you can do infinite things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing the versatility of whole life insurance the longer I'm in this way of becoming my own banker because of all these different attributes of, well, it's from a mutual company. And that provides a lot of control. That provides a lot of profitability through dividends. Oh, and by the way, you may have a chronic illness rider, a terminal illness rider on
Mm-hmm.
this policy. Oh, by the way, you may be able to have this policy constructed in a way where you will be able to guaranteed increase your insurability in the future by adding this to the policy as well. And oh,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, perhaps you should have a child benefit rider on that. And I know I'm talking about whole life insurance in and of itself in a lot right now, right?
Yeah.
But all of this is going to lead to a greater ability for bankability in the future
Mm-hmm.
when that policy is really properly structured. So there's so many things going on where if we just knew how whole life insurance could be built and then could be used, it leads you to that phone that can do, infinite number of things to include, of course, infinite banking for you, your
Mm-hmm.
family, your business, what have you. So I'm still learning. So that's why I say also I don't mind talking shop. I'm still learning things even after
Mm-hmm.
a decade of doing infinite banking. I'm still learning things about and recognizing things about whole life insurance and its versatility. So I'm here for it all. All right, cool. So some things you gravitated towards right away. Some things you had to work through
Mm-hmm.
by revisiting the book, revisiting it in conversations with your buddy Luke. Awesome. Tell me about this because there's this dynamic often in households, right? And you say that you run the finances in your household. Sometimes roles are split. Somebody assumes this role completely, etc. What were conversations with your wife like? Because there you are, married man, children in the home.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about where you were as a family, what you had going on, and what those first conversations with your wife were like, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So let me sort of tell a little bit of a story that I think will really go into that. And I'll try to, I'll keep it really brief. So when my wife and I first got together, I was not very good with money, and I'll be the first to admit that. And I had probably about $4,000 or $5,000 in credit card debt. and I wasn't doing a whole lot to really control it. And my wife at the time we weren't married, but she's like, you need to do something about that. She's like, it's not going to go away. So she really challenged me to kind of man up, right? And start taking responsibility financially. And so I started paying that down. I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial type spirit, which I get probably 100% from my mom. She's run two businesses. Lots. I don't want to. That's a separate side topic that we probably talk about another time. But she's phenomenal that way. Um, anyway, I had an online business and I was started selling a bunch of things, and I was able to knock that debt out in no time. And then I realized, you know, like we don't always see, I was paying the long-term consequence of that with a really poor credit score. And if we were going to get married, I was going to need to really do something about that. So I started to take finances really seriously, and I got that, took care of those payments, started clearing out debt, started looking at what could I do to raise my credit score? What are all the things I need to do? And really just kind of got hyper focused on it for the better part of a few years. And obviously has still continued and it's only grown. But I think that challenge of I needed to step up to the plate if I was going to have this woman as my wife. I didn't want to be in a situation where I was like not doing what I needed to. I needed to lead her the right way. And over time, that's obviously grown, was able to, raise my credit score significantly. We bought our home. We did a lot of different things that way. And I've always had this investment mindset in the background, but at the same time, it was like, well, I had this debt over here, but I'm wanting to invest. Like you can't, those two things don't work together. So I had to work through that. But she's been really gracious and just trusting me in this process. I mean, I keep her informed, right? I said to her, I found something that I think can change our lives. And she's like, well, if you think that's what the best thing to do is, then let's do it. But I also think the part that and she's told me this now, a few years later, is the fact that she knows that our family is taken care of if something were to happen to me, right? That's the great part about this. And that's like the side benefit of it. The way I look at it now is like, well, I want to retake the banking function in my life. And yeah, we get some death benefit on top of it in the process. But yeah, I think she's been so gracious and trusting me that way. But I don't abuse that. That's a very serious thing for me to ensure that I'm doing what's right by my family and keeping that in mind whenever I'm making those types of decisions for us.
I'll say it from a man's perspective. A good, virtuous woman brings out the best in us. You're making me think about, and my wife and I were married when I had a surgery,
Mm-hmm.
had appendicitis. Appendix had to come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after the fact, I'm at home and I'm going from someplace to someplace when I'm finally able to move a little bit, right? And my wife says to me, stand tall. And in that moment, I didn't realize that I wasn't standing up straight and tall and
Mm-hmm.
erect, right? And I know that that's just a simple, physical example of what I'm hearing, you verbalize about
Yeah.
this IBC experience. But inside of me, I'm thinking, well, yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that, that's been years and years ago that she said that, but that's one of my favorite things that my wife's ever said to me was stand tall. So anything that compels us towards being, in your case, say a better steward,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, or us standing tall, we could say it in that way, us standing tall as fathers before our children to give them the kind of
Yeah.
example that I believe you would feel like we should be making for them and for
Mm-hmm.
our wives. They can really call out a lot of greatness, potential greatness that's in us that combined can come to
Yep.
fruition. Thanks for letting me revisit that memory
Yeah.
out of my file. And I've recorded a conversation with my wife on the channel that I think's something. Well, I knew it was something that I want to do for a long time, Rob. And what I realized in having that conversation and in having other private conversations, my wife as well has really gravitated towards appreciating the legacy and the protection aspect
Mhm.
of what we've done. She loves seeing, because we'll have a yearly review of our system of policies, and we'll calculate and look at these things together. Where's our cash value at? What's
Mhm.
that grown to? What do our dividends look like? What does that death benefit look like? What is that net worth that we're creating for our family that we have now
Mhm.
and for future generations? She loves that, and I love that she loves that. And but I understand, like you, that there's so much more, of course, than just that. But I think it's also important to give the respect to that it's due. In my opinion,
Mhm.
I don't think that I can be too covered. In my opinion, I
Yeah.
can't have a big enough number, right?
I
I'm,
know.
I'm actually in a
That's where
stage
I'm
where
at.
I'm right. That's my sentiment, right? Now these insurance companies have a different perspective, and they're currently telling me that I can't have any more because I recently got a policy that added another 7 figures to that protection number, and they're saying, nope, you're capped out currently, right? Um,
Currently.
but my wife appreciates it too. So tell me this then: what were the last things that you needed to do before you pulled the trigger and got a policy to be able to use a policy?
Um, I don't know. Can you, I guess, help me understand more of what you're looking for there? I just want to make sure I answer that the right way.
Well, just answer it however it comes natural to you. But what I'm asking is you knew somebody who pointed you towards the book, and you're having
Hmm.
conversations with Luke. You read the book for yourself. You're having conversations with your wife. So when you got to the point where you knew enough that you were going to do this, you'd been praying, and you're seeing this as your answer.
Hmm.
What did it look for you? What did it look like for you actually getting started?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we, like I said, we started a little small, and I took a policy loan probably within the first 35 days that I had opened it because I wanted to get the truck payment that I had off. I did not want that at the bank any longer. So I took that, chunked that down on the existing loan, paid that off on my policy because I was actually ahead of my payments on my truck. So I'm like, oh, well, if I'm 6 months ahead, I don't have to pay this for 6 months. That's enough for me to clear that out at the insurance company and do it again. So I only had, and when I say small, like my policy was small, I only had about $2,200 worth of money available in my cash value on my first policy in that first year. And so I used that 2.5 times within a year. And that part of it was just awesome because then no more truck payment. The title was mine. And I'm like, okay, this is working way better than I expected. And I'm like, now we need to really expand this system to be able to say, can we take on the mortgage? Can we take on our next vehicle? And I think that's what it's been is like I kind of set these stepped goals of what we want to be able to do. Right now, it's our next vehicle will be fully financed by our own bank, and without a doubt. And we technically could do that now, but that doesn't fit into the way I've structured things out. I don't want that. I also like keeping some powder dry, right? So to speak, of if something goes wrong, I need to have some money available, and that's the great part about it too. So it's thinking about how you restructure a lot of your finances in the process, where I want as much as I possibly can to go into my policies first before I ever think about doing anything else with that money. And the reason being, every time it goes in, if it's going in as PUA or it's going in as premium, premium is premium, and that is going to earn cash value every day going forward, no matter what, guaranteed. And on top of that, I also can earn dividends on it for the rest of my lifetime. Obviously, we know they're not guaranteed, but with these great companies that we work with, they they pay out every year and have for over 150 years in some cases. So that part of it to me is just awesome. But I don't want to get too sidetracked there. What I'm saying is as my level of understanding has come in, it's how do I get as much of my income into these policies first? And then we can use that to finance the things that we need within our lifetime. And it more efficiently manages our cash flow. I go back to when we first started this, I was lucky if I had, maybe $2,000 sitting in a checking account at the bank or something like that. I mean, now we have more money in, not that I'm proud of it, but it's really there for future premium. Um, it's all there for premium is what I should say. But I have more money available now than we've ever had in our lifetime. And it's like, how did that happen? Well, it happened because we took charge of the cash flow in our lives. And that's what infinite banking, that's what that process is about, is taking charge of that banking function. And it's amazing, 2.5 years in, what we have. And I'm like, holy cow, building on this property that we bought a few years ago is a reality for us now. In the past, it was more of a pipe dream, like, well, I hope we can build on it someday. Now it's like we're going to be able to do this, and it's exciting.
That is exciting. It gets me excited for you. I love the verbiage that you used of powder dry as well. I think I'd like to underscore that.
Yeah.
So, well, but all right. So you tackled, because that's what you decided to do, the truck. That was your first priority. It sounds like
Yep.
once you got your policy, paid premium. You said it was a small amount of premium, but still you were able to use policy loans from that first policy to tackle the truck, and
Hmm.
that was your first priority, and you knocked it out.
Yep.
So it sounded like it sounded like maybe you had been going ahead and setting aside future truck payments already, because you said something about having 6 months worth.
So yeah, my thoughts on emergency funds are that I essentially pay things out ahead of time. So instead of it just sitting there, it's paid ahead, which in hindsight probably not the best thing, right? Because it could be earning interest now, knowing what I know now, right? But it's this cushion that it gives me that if I had lost my job or I needed to, be protected in some way, it, or if God forbid, I graduated early, you know, Maggie wouldn't have to worry about having to make that payment that month. It was there's there's some ease there. So that's kind of where my mindset was. But now that's obviously changed in that I'm, you know, all of that money is, allocated towards premium. Some of my policies are actually, I have a full year, sitting there in the deposit fund in advance. So I just like being prepared in that way, and it eases pressure. It's a way to create emergency funding in the event that you need it. Um, and now it's just a lot more efficient with the way that I'm structuring it now, because I've learned how to better utilize those policies and the features that come with them, and really put that money to use in a more efficient way than what I was before.
Sure, but what you had tactically done was used a checking account or a savings account or something, and you just been paying the truck payment ahead of schedule, and you had a
Yep.
few months or several months built up there. So that's what I thought that I was hearing from you. And
Yeah.
what I would say is, of course, we can do things more efficiently knowing infinite banking, but also the it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about you had this entrepreneur bent, and
Mm-hmm.
yet you were running consumer debt, you know
Mm-hmm.
so here with the truck, you had good habits that, yes, knowing more information, you could apply what you were roughly doing to be more efficient. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, if you don't have those good habits to start with,
Yeah.
efficiency is just pie in the sky, because you
Yep.
can't put it to practice. Does that? So I'm trying to commend you, and for everybody that hears that and is inspired to do anything to level up their game by just beating some of those human problems, like what Nelson talks about in the book,
Mm-hmm.
Parkinson's law and stuff. They're going
Yeah.
to win by default. If people
Yep.
that don't do infinite banking but that deal with the human problems that you're talking about, that they've heard me talk about. If we'll deal with those human problems, we're going to win
Mm-hmm.
against our peers. We're going to win against our former selves that weren't confronting those human problems just by doing that. Now, if you do then add, of course, the better information and the more
Mm-hmm.
efficiency, et cetera, you get all these facets of properly designed whole life insurance under your control, and you've got access to capital. And of course, it gets infinitely better. But
Yeah.
just by doing that, you were already on a track to do great things. Awesome. Paid off the truck. How long was it before you decided to add to your system, to that first policy?
Um, it went pretty quick because at that point in time, I was in the process of I was like, okay, I want to get licensed because I was finding how much of an advantage it was. So I had actually gotten licensed, and my first policy I ever wrote was on myself. So, um, but the way that that worked though is I realized that what I had always been thinking was a good idea was actually maybe not so good of an idea, and that was putting money into a 401k. So that's where a lot of my premium came from for my first policy was redirecting those funds into something I own and control and something that was not creating a future tax liability. So that being said, all that money that was going into my 401k now funneled into that policy and was allowed us to expand the banking system that way. And obviously, I'm not like telling somebody what to do. It's not financial advice. You got to figure out what's best for you. But it goes right back to what Nelson said, right? When you know what the problem is, you're going to know what to do. Well, my problem was I didn't have a big enough bank, so I needed to create one. And that was a great place to retake that. And people want to talk about rates of return and all this stuff. You can't put a rate of return on what it means to have financial freedom to do the things that you would have not been able to do. There's no way I could have contributed to my daughter's wedding with the way that we were running things before. And then being able to do that last year and help bless them in some ways on being able to do that. We bought our chicken coop using our policies, right? Like by expanding our banking system, it's created these other ways for us to do things differently. And that part of it's just been phenomenal. Just to retake that function in a way that is so it's the level of control. And I'm not like this control freak person. So I don't want people to misunderstand what we mean by taking control. It's that you get to make the decisions of what's best for you because no one else is going to do that for you. I don't care how good of an advisor you have in any of these other things. Some of them might, but very rarely, and at least in my experience, no one was truly looking out for me. And the only person that's going to do that is us. And I mean, but that's where it's like I want to do that for my clients. I'm going to help look out for them. I'm going to do that for them. But I do that for them by educating them and helping them to take control of their situation. And I'm here to help. I'm just here to bounce ideas off of. I'm here to help guide them in the process, help point them to maybe books that they could read that are going to guide them in that process too, because I want them to experience what you've experienced, what I've experienced in this whole process. And it's just so freeing for people when your hopes and dreams can become real. I mean, how do you how do you put a rate of return on that? You don't. Like that's so something that's so foreign to so many people. And people think you're crazy, but it's like, no, this is very real. It's very possible for anyone to achieve. I mean, that's what Nelson said in the book. That's why he used the average bear, right? The average person in everything that he was talking about, because it's there for anyone. If they want to expand their mind, if they want to learn, if we want to, you know, break down those human factors, if we want to remove the arrival syndrome, it's possible. Anything's possible.
This is so good. So you're probably your favorite client then, since the first policy that you wrote was for yourself because you were ready to add to your system. So there's that. That was a thought that crossed my mind earlier. I love it. I mean, contributing to your daughter's wedding, chicken coops, paying off a truck, expanding your system. There's so much there. And conventionally, all of these things, weddings, vehicles, investments, the properties where we live, the homes that we live or want to live in, all this stuff that you've brought up, the traditional route is, credit or cash. Credit being we're asking somebody else for permission to go out and do X, Y, or Z.
Yep.
Paying them interest for it if they qualify us. Once we fill out their paperwork, they control that collateral over our head, etc. But that's normal. Again, just like earlier, hamster on the wheel. That's normal.
Yep.
We don't necessarily look at that. Or some folks paying cash for things, and you've given examples of that. I've given examples of that. It's a better way, but then that money's gone. And then maybe you're at some point in life, like you expressed earlier, and you're saying, but there's something wrong here. I'm not sure what, but there's something wrong here. I'm doing all the right things. I am contributing to this government qualified plan. We are paying cash for things. I don't have a lot of debt, so there were also those points in your life and mine where you're like, it's got to be better than this. It's got to be. So well, that was an absolute pleasure for me to host my friend Rob on the channel. Remember, his contact information will be below in the show notes for you to be able to connect with him if you're already working with him or you would like to introduce yourself to him. You can always find me at durhamtalents.com. If you would, let me know down in the comments section below when I'm having these types of interviews what questions I may not be asking that you would like me to ask, or what more information you would like to have from folks when they are conveying their infinite banking journey to you. And my hope is that you live and leave a lasting legacy.